Hey everyone, welcome to Step-by-Step Crafts with My Crafty Personality. My name is Naomi and I will be guiding you through this tutorial. In this video, we will be going step by step on how to create this t-shirt shown here using a screen printing technique. I would recommend watching the video entirely first, listen to the tips, tricks, and troubleshooting before diving in. You can also download the step-by-step PDF guide that complements this video from my website to use once you're ready, and you can reference back to the video anytime. This is the technique that I like to use so that I can see the entire process and gather everything I need before making my projects. Here is a complete list and pictures of materials you will need to create this project. I have also attached links for each of the items below, and you can find the lists in the PDF step-by-step guide for this tutorial on my website. To get started, you will need to open Cricut Design Space on your computer. Click to create a new project. Now here, you can either create your own design, or if you already have an image to use, you can use that too. For this project, I'm going to use the strong image you saw earlier. I purchased it on designbundles.net and provided the link below in case you're interested. Click on the Upload button on the left-hand side. You will see a bunch of recently uploaded images on your screen, including the strong one that I will be using. To show you the entire process, I will show you again how to get it here. You're going to press the Upload Image button and click on Browse. Search for your image where you have it stored on your computer. Click on it and press Open. From here, you confirm that the image is correct on the screen and click on Save. Your image should now appear under the recently uploaded images. Click on it so that there is an active green square around it. It should also show up near the bottom right. Click on Insert Image. Your image now appears within Cricut Design Space. You can customize the image to your liking. Be sure to resize the image to match the material you will be using it for. In this case, I am putting this on a t-shirt, and I typically make these about 10 inches in width for a medium shirt. Once you have it sized, you are ready to make it. Now, before we move forward, I noticed this yellow hazard triangle here, which tells me that there's something wrong. When I hover over it, a pop-up appears and tells me what the issue is. Here, it states that the Cricut Joy is set as a device to cut, which is not compatible with the size of the current project. Slightly above that, you can click on the drop-down menu and make sure to connect the correct machine you will be using for cutting. In this case, we will switch over to the Cricut Maker, and now you see the little hazard sign is gone. We can now move forward to make our project. Click on the green Make It button at the top right of your screen. On this screen, you will notice the design you will be cutting placed on a Cricut cutting mat. When you click and drag your design for placement, you notice that the strong portion of the design is not attached to the Joshua 1:9 portion. I intentionally left this in here as this can commonly happen with purchased and uploaded images, and we can go through this troubleshooting step. Click on the gray Cancel button on the bottom right, and this will take you back to Design Space. Take your mouse and click and drag over both portions of the image so that they're both highlighted. Once they're both highlighted, go to the bottom right of the screen and click Attach. This will attach the images for cutting purposes and keep them exactly in the position that it shows. Now we're ready to make it. I would recommend to save your work here in case the system crashes on you. You can see here that when you click and drag on the image now, that they are both moving together as one. Move the image slightly downward and towards the center to allow for some space around it. This is going to be helpful later and allow you to tape it down to your screen once you're ready to screen print it. The next thing you want to do is make sure that you mirror your image. You do this by clicking the little toggle that says Mirror on the left of the screen. It will turn on and green in color. You will notice that the image flips around. Typically, when you're working with permanent vinyl, you don't mirror, but in this case, we are creating a stencil, which is why we need to mirror. This will help make more sense later once we're putting the screen and the stencil together. Once you have a position you're happy with, click the green Continue button on the bottom right. Now you're going to select your base material. In this case, we're going to click on Premium Vinyl. Then you want to make sure that the proper tool is loaded in your Cricut Maker or whatever cutting machine you are using. Now it's time to prepare your mat and load it. So let's switch over to that. Here I am using the green standard grip Cricut cutting mat and some permanent vinyl. Take your sheet of vinyl and place it with the shiny side up. You want the machine to cut directly on the vinyl. Make sure to rub the vinyl down and attach it to the mat as flush as possible. You can use your hands for this, or you can use a brayer tool if you have one. Once you have your vinyl paper on there securely, it's ready to be loaded. Your Cricut Maker machine should have the double arrow button blinking. Insert your cutting mat into the machine and press the blinking arrow button so that it can load. Once loaded, the See Cricut sign button should start blinking. Click on it and it's ready to be cut. Once it's done cutting, unload your mat by clicking the blinking arrow button. Now it's time to weed. For this project, we're going to be doing what's called reverse weeding, where we will be taking out the design instead of the vinyl around it, and this will create your stencil. You can use whatever weeding tool you have handy. If you don't have one, that's okay. You can also use a household tweezer. I like to do this reverse weeding by leaving the vinyl on the mat and weeding directly off of that. This avoids the vinyl from curling up on you. Be sure to weed out your design very carefully. I like to look at the actual design on the computer screen while I do this to make sure that I'm taking out the correct parts. Once you're done weeding, turn your mat upside down and carefully remove the sheet of vinyl by pulling the mat up and away from the vinyl sheet. This makes it easier to remove, in my opinion, and the vinyl paper does not curl as much. Now you are going to cut around your design, making sure to leave a bit of space around it to allow for taping it down on your screen later, but not too much space to where it is difficult to manage. Now it's time to transfer your vinyl onto your transfer tape. This can be a bit tricky, so you need to take your time and be very careful. You want to cut your tape slightly larger than the piece of vinyl. Start peeling back the transfer tape slightly. I find that it makes it easier to attach the edge of the tape to the table surface you're working on, just above where your material is. Once you do that, slowly start attaching it directly onto the shiny side of your vinyl sheet. You want your design to be facing up. You want to be pressing it down onto the vinyl as you go with your hand and/or scraper tool so that it attaches with the least amount of air pockets as possible. Once your transfer tape is attached to the vinyl design, take your scraping tool and try to remove as many air pockets from the top as possible. You want to firmly varnish all of the edges, which is going to help adhere your vinyl design to your paper transfer tape. Once I am done with that side, I like to turn it around and again give it a nice and firm pass over with my scraping tool. This again is going to ensure that it is removing as many air pockets as possible. You want to make sure that all of those edges between the letters and the floating pieces adhere to the transfer tape. It's best to use a medium strength transfer tape for this. If you notice here, I folded the paper slightly creased along the middle, which is going to serve as a visual reminder for me for design placement on the screen and shirt later on. Now you're ready to pull the backing off of the vinyl. Again, you need to be very careful because if you didn't scrape hard enough, the pieces can end up staying on the backing instead of transferring onto your tape. You want to pull back slowly, and if you notice any piece lifting, just lay it back down and scrape it with your tool until it starts sticking completely. You might have to put a little bit of pressure here so that they can stick to your transfer tape. Avoid pulling back too fast, as this can cause your vinyl to rip and mess up your stencil that you created. Once your stencil is on your transfer tape, now it is time to place it on your silk screen frame. You want to place this on the back of the frame. You can either place it horizontally or vertically, depending on the size of the design. This specific design does not fit vertically, so I will place it horizontally, and this will allow more space for me to work with the squeegee later. Now, you want to gently press the vinyl onto the back of the screen with the goal of the least amount of air pockets as possible. You can start with one edge and slowly lay it down, taking your scraping tool and gently scrape along all of the edges. Please note, when pressing on the back portion, you are actually pressing on the screen with no support underneath, so you need to be gentle to not put so much pressure and break it. Once it's on, turn it around and start varnishing and scraping on this side. You can put a little bit more pressure on this side since the screen is on a hard surface. Your goal is to transfer the vinyl onto your screen. Take care to make sure that all of the edges of your design are flat and flush so that there are no air pockets. If air pockets are left, this will increase the chances of paint seeping through and ruin the crispness of your design. So I suggest to take your time with this part and make sure you're scraping all of those edges carefully. Once you are content with your varnishing, turn the frame around and go ahead and start slowly peeling off the transfer tape. Again, I'm going to stress you want to do this slowly and carefully because if pulled back too fast, some of the floating pieces may stay with the transfer tape and some of the edges may lift and rip, causing your stencil to ruin. Lift slowly. As I lift, I like to kind of fold the transfer tape onto itself so that it doesn't re-stick or start sticking onto other pieces. If you do notice any vinyl lifting with the transfer tape, gently put that little portion back down and varnish it with your scraping tool so that it sticks to the screen, kind of like we did when transferring the vinyl to the transfer tape. Remember, take your time with these steps because the more accurate and precise you are here, the better seal you get against the screen, the higher the chance of getting a nice design with clean edges when you are applying the paint later. Sometimes, even if you try to avoid it, you will get some pieces that come completely off. In these cases, I would recommend getting some tweezers and placing it back as close as possible to where it belongs. Look at a flipped version of your image on your computer or phone screen, if possible, to help with placement of these loose pieces. Once you have removed your transfer tape and have all your pieces in place, I recommend going over the vinyl directly with your scraping tool again. Remove all of the air pockets along the design edges to avoid paint from seeping through. I would recommend varnishing both sides so that you can get the best results. Be careful on the back side so that you don't apply too much pressure and cause the screen to break. This is a longer and more tedious process compared to the iron-on vinyl, but screen printed items are also known to last longer than the iron-on vinyl since the ink is directly transferring into the shirt. Once your vinyl is secured on the screen, you're going to start taping the edges with some masking tape or some painter's tape. You want to make sure that there are no exposed areas on the screen aside from your actual design. This will avoid you accidentally getting any ink in unwanted areas. Also, be careful not to cover any of your design while you're doing this. I noticed some little air pockets and decided to varnish a little bit more here. Once you're finished taping, you're ready to start screening the ink onto your shirt. Place your shirt on a flat, hard surface and have the area where you're going to screen print clean and with as little wrinkles as possible. At this point, I recommend placing a piece of cardstock in between your shirt. This will avoid your ink from seeping through to the other side of your material. Now, you want to try and center the design on the shirt. There are several approaches people take to help with this. Here is what I did. I folded the vinyl design in half prior to placing it on the screen, pinching it at the top and bottom to mark the center of the design, as you saw earlier. On my screening frame, I have little markings that denote the center of the frame. So when I transfer the vinyl onto the screen, I use that as a landmark for centering it. Once I have my shirt laid out, I measure about 3 inches below the midline of the neck, and I try to get the design as centered and straight as possible. Once it's on the shirt, flatten the design onto the shirt by pressing down with your hand and smoothing it out, or using a squeegee to get it to adhere to the shirt prior to applying any ink. Once your stencil frame is positioned on your shirt, you are ready to transfer the ink. This is the messy part. Take a spoon or a little spatula and mix it slightly. Then you're going to take a decent spoonful amount and gently place it across over the top of your design, making a thick line of paint. Don't be stingy with the amount of paint you place on there. You want to get a decent amount across the top so that when you squeegee down, there's enough to go through your entire design. And don't worry, you can scrape up any excess paint and put it back into your jar later. Try to get either a paper plate or a small container so that you can place your squeegee on once it has paint on it and avoid getting your surface dirty. After you have your paint lined up along the top, you're going to hold down the frame with one hand and grab your squeegee with the other hand. I don't think it matters which hand you use as long as you have a nice firm grip on the one you're holding the squeegee with, and you can provide steady, firm, downward pressure to get that ink to infuse as even as possible. Place your squeegee right above your paint and press down firmly and slide it down over your stencil design. Make sure you're covering every area up with the paint. You may have to take some of the excess paint off of the squeegee and reapply it in certain areas to get an even look. You can put any excess paint directly into your jar. Sometimes one nice firm pass is enough depending on the size of your design, and you'll be able to tell once you're looking at it. Other times, you will notice that some areas are a little bit lighter than others. In these areas, you can add some more paint. Try to go in one direction with the squeegee. Try to avoid going up, down, and back and forth, as this will increase the chances of the paint seeping through. Once you're happy with the ink placement, you want to make sure that there are no vertical lines left. So give your design one or two last firm passes to remove lines or excess areas of paint before lifting the screen. You should try to hold down the frame the entire time to avoid any movement of the design or frame. When you are done and ready, you're going to gently lift the frame up and away from one side, being very careful not to spill any ink or drag the frame across the material. And there you are. You can see I got a little bit of paint off to the side there because I didn't put the tape all the way to the edge. This is why you need to make sure you tape the entire screen because it can sneak in there and leak through. And there you have it, your amazing screen printed shirt. You want to let your material dry for at least several hours, even better if it dries overnight. Once it is completely dry, you want to heat press or iron over the design. Make sure you put something in between the heated surface and the ink design, like parchment paper or butcher paper. I used a Cricut Easy Press, heated it to 320 degrees, and pressed for about 30 to 40 seconds. This step helps bond the ink to the shirt and makes it last longer. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed my tutorial and find it easy to follow and helpful. Don't forget that this tutorial has a step-by-step PDF that really supplements the video for those who prefer to have a list of steps in front of them when actually making the project. It complements the video so you can watch it and take notes if needed anytime. Let me know if you have any questions. Please follow and subscribe for future tutorials. Also, if you have any projects you're interested in getting a tutorial for, please comment below and I will see if I can make it happen. Thank you again and happy crafting!